Welcome to Curtin Call. I'm Kevin Curtin. I'm here today in Miami, Florida with multi-platinum recording artist, producer, writer, Mr. Kevin Rudolf.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
Good to see you, man.
Very good, very good. So, it's a good time. I'm looking forward to this conversation. So, let's get it started. How did you get started in this crazy business of music?
Crazily. I started out as a guitar player kid. I was, living in New York City, grew up there, and I was, like a shredder, and I was just, jamming and trying to get, I get into a band or whatever I was doing at the time. And I got into an article of Guitar World magazine as, young 14-year-old kid prodigy, and that's what started the actual experience with the business.
Right.
And from there, just finding various outlets from playing in bands in New York to, I got a computer and a keyboard and I made a little dance EP, and then I was just sort of finding myself.
Yeah.
And then when I was about 19, I made a demo. I was like, I gotta make some money. I gotta really do this either for real or for not.
Yeah.
And I made an album, and that was released on Maverick Records, which was Madonna's label at the time, on Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
And, typical story, got signed, got dropped, probably got a lot further than most people who get signed and dropped now, who don't even get an album out.
Right.
And, but that was my first taste.
Yeah.
And then what happened, that's the answer to the first part of your question.
Yeah.
Should I continue or should
Sure, yeah, please.
Well,
and by the way, when you were brought on to Maverick, I mean, were you like, holy shit? I mean,
Yeah, I was like, holy shit. I was out in LA. I was recording in this hotel. I met all these, famous people. It's the typical LA story of wow, what's my life going to be like now?
Yeah.
And then you sort of find out my life's actually not going to be like that. It's kind of that segment of my life's going to be over very soon.
Yeah.
And from there, I got very discouraged for a while, like a lot of people in that situation.
Yeah.
Not realizing that it was just the first chapter instead of the end. So I moved down to Miami, and I got very interested in the hip hop world.
Yeah.
It was the only part of the industry that I could see at the time that seemed exempt from all of the rules and kind of regulations and being in a major label and being sort of told what to do and told what to look, all those things that as an artist are very disagreeable to your insides, where you want to be yourself, you want to express yourself, you want to make your own music, and then suddenly you get there and you're kind of being treated like a 4-year-old.
Right.
So, but in the hip hop world, it just seemed to be so other, and no one seemed to let them do what they were doing.
Yeah.
And I was a big Timbaland fan, and our mutual friend Jimmy Douglas, who I had met along that journey with Maverick.
Who's a great guy, by the way.
He's a great guy, by the way.
If you don't know.
That's right. Look up the interview.
Yeah.
He kind of let me get in there a little bit, and I sort of thought, well, I don't know what I'm going to do here, but I'll bring my guitar, and because I was always a guitar player.
Yeah.
Started playing on a lot of those records and playing on the Little Kim and the Justin Timberlake and the Nelly Furtado.
Right.
And there was no money in it, but I had I got a lot of plaques.
But it was the experience.
I was the experience, and the best part is I loved his production style. I thought it was so innovative at the time, and it still is.
Still is,
Such a pioneer of hip hop and popular music in general. One of the one of the real greats from that time period. Mm-hmm. And I would just watch and learn and absorb and soak it all in. And for everything from the culture to being in Miami at the Hit Factory and seeing the Bentleys and the diamonds and the thing and the life, and it was a very surreal time. That's when it was really happening down here, and it was just really all like exciting and fascinating and new to me.
Yeah.
And then at that time, kind of also again realizing this isn't really going anywhere, and I've been an artist and I write, and I also saw what Tim was doing when he would experiment with more like rock leaning stuff.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, well, I already know that. I grew up with that. That's in my blood and in my bones.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know that, but he's got the beat making down, to a T. It's incredible. Yeah. And I absorbed, I soaked a lot of that in. Mm-hmm. So I decided at that time, I want to make my own record again. I want to be an artist. I want to reinvent myself. I want to do this.
Yeah.
And all the stuff that I had been through and all of the emotion and, you know, just my own coming of age story and looking back into my childhood and everything I had been through growing up in New York, I decided to make a concept album.
Yeah.
And that was In the City, and that was my first album that had Let It Rock on it.
Right. And, you know, just transitioning into that now, so can you talk a little bit about how that whole deal came about with Cash Money and how that whole experience kind of came into being?
I met Slim at the Hit Factory, and he was wanting me to produce a couple songs for an artist he had signed, and he had liked a couple of the songs, and I played him. I did those couple records, and I'm in the process of like, what are we doing? Is it coming out?
Yeah,
and then I could feel his love for music. He really loved music.
Yeah.
All kinds of music. And I said, well, look, Slim, I'm working on my own album as well, and I gave him a CD at the time with 6 songs on it.
Yeah.
And he called me a few weeks later, and he said, there's this one song called Coffee and Donuts that I love. That started our relationship, and that started building what we were building at the time, which was me doing a song, every few days or a week or whatever, and then sending it to him, and just that bond.
Yeah.
And when the Carter 3 came out, I remember it sold 500,000 in a day.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I was in a place where I was like, Slim, are we doing this? Are we not doing this?
Yeah.
And he said, okay, we're going to get Lil Wayne on that first single, that Let It Rock song, which is what I've been wanting, because knowing from the business and what, I figured, look, it's a good song. I didn't know if it was a hit or not. I didn't know enough to know at the time. And we still never really know if something's a hit until it is. Yeah. But I thought that would get it, like, a lot of exposure. And I had been kind of, I had met Wayne at that time. And it was just a really exciting time for him. So that's what happened. And then 2 weeks later, we were on Z100. And that was another surprise, because I wasn't expecting to get any love from that kind of radio world.
Yeah. So when the song eventually becomes, a hit, and I think it peaked at number 5 on the Billboard?
5 in the Hot 100, but
which is incredible. I mean, in this day and age, if you could get anything in the top 10, even in the Hot 100, I mean, you're.
And it was great because it was one of those songs that never went away. Sold 5 million copies and or downloads, and it's just one of those songs that I'd always read about songs that change people's lives.
Yeah,
and that really was a song that changed my life.
Yeah, sure. I remember. Really I remember living in Miami, I believe, when that came out, and it was a huge record. I was going to ask, for you, how did that hit record and that whole experience kind of change your life from then on?
It changed it from everything. Here I am in my little apartment in Miami, and I'm making my little songs and my stuff, and just thinking, this is what I've got. I've got a guitar, I got a computer, and I got a microphone. I'm gonna work to make something. Yeah. To suddenly every door being open and being on the road and doing interviews and shows and performing, all kinds. I mean, you're suddenly out there in the world. You're not home anymore. I wasn't home anymore. I was getting into the studio with other artists as much as I could. Yeah. I was doing everything from like the NBA All-Star game to radio shows to touring, and I got busy. I went from not being busy to being busy. Yeah, definitely. I was going to ask too, you were talking about your guitar playing before, and when you're in the studio, do you have a favorite guitar, electric, to play? I always was playing at that time. I had a gold top Les Paul that I loved a lot. Nice. And then I had it refinished, and it didn't sound as good because it was falling apart, and the finish was it was just so bad because it had, been through some accidents. Yeah. I had it refinished and I haven't played it since. And I was going to ask too, who are some of your favorite guitar players, that influenced your style and your, just... there's so many. I love... if you could give me maybe like a top 5. Sure. I loved Eddie Van Halen. The best. So innovative. I loved Jeff Beck. Jeff Beck, yeah. One of my favorite albums. I used to love this Jeff Beck's Guitar Shop album. I listened to it all the time. Yeah. I loved Jimi Hendrix and Clapton, of course, all the greats. I did get to see Stevie Ray Vaughan when I was a little kid. Yeah, my mom took me to that. My mom was a singer in New York, and
Nothing like a little pride and joy.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Absolutely.
So I mean, those are. But there's, and I was also, I love Joe Satriani and Steve Vai
Sure.
and all the shredders at the time, being a kid and wanting that dexterity and that kind of thing was always appealing to me.
So it's kind of cool that you were able to kind of come in as kind of a rock and roller and kind of, fuse that with the hip hop.
Yeah, and it was very natural because I had lived in those worlds for a long time.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, hey, I'm going to take, peanut butter and jelly and put them together.
Yeah, and there's only so many people that have really done that and done it well, so.
Yeah, and it's funny too because they seem to have a bad reputation or musically to a certain degree, like a Limp Bizkit or a Kid Rock, but those are great artists, in their own right. They're both really great.
Yeah.
And the rap rock combo seems to get a bad name, but it was very, very real and organic for me to do that.
Yeah. So can you kind of like take us through briefly the journey from Let It Rock blows up, changes your whole world, I mean everything just changes, and then kind of bring us up until now if you can,
Sure.
kind of in a nutshell.
How long do we have? No.
We got some time.
From that point, we released a few more singles, and the album came out and had another pretty big single, a gold single called Welcome to the World with Kid Cudi on it, and also Rick Ross. We had two different versions. My album came out, and more touring and more just, you're suddenly thrust into the world, like I said.
Yeah.
Started producing a lot more for other artists. I wanted the feeling of, because I saw how quickly artists would come and go.
Yeah.
And I wanted to sort of plant myself in the industry more so that I'd, be able to continue making music and no matter what happened, as an artist. And had a couple hits right out the gate, one with Cobra Starship and Selena Gomez, and did everything from Leona Lewis to just...
You worked with Keith Urban too.
Keith Urban was a little later, but had a #1 song with Keith Urban a couple years later. Yeah. Was just very fortunate to be to go to Nashville for 2 days and then write 2 songs and then have one of them. People probably would hate me in Nashville for telling that story, but that's actually what happened.
Yeah. God bless.
Beginner's luck.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I guess that brings us to my next question. What's going on now? What are you working on? What can we see maybe coming out in the next couple of years?
A couple of years is too far.
Well, how about the next year?
We got to do it right now.
Yeah, right now. Yeah, what's going on?
What's coming out today?
Yeah, what's exactly?
Well, I got off Cash Money Records last year. Yeah. And so I started just really experimenting and doing some stuff in a few different worlds. I did a song on Kygo's record that I had written with Sia, and that kind of piqued my interest and sort of led me a little bit down the road into the EDM world. Which has been really interesting because I think there's sort of, again, like that's the new thing with the no rules again. You know, it's like I'm always looking for the classroom that has the teacher that doesn't give any rule. You know what I mean? Exactly. But it's funny when I like look at myself objectively that kind of is it in a way. So I think there's so much room for interesting stuff in that world, and I'm working on some of that stuff. I'm working on it, which again would be a Kevin Rudolf album, and also various songs that I'm remixing that are songs that I've done with some very big artists that never came out that should see the light of day. Cool. So that'll be a part of that as well. And then I have some just sort of creative indulgence music things that I'm doing that we'll see what happens with. But I'm continuing to write and produce for other artists. Just worked with Kiara, who's got a big song called Gold right now, and she's great. And just more artists and just keep evolving. And but I feel I'm excited. I'm ready to launch the next big thing for me. Like we're excited too. Yeah, we look forward to that. I appreciate it, man. It's just kind of been that period of like percolating under the surface, and then now ready to like attack again with new music. I was gonna ask, kind of brings me to my next question. What do you think is lacking or missing in music today?
in this day and age. You know?
Lacking and missing.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure everyone always thought something was lacking and missing in every era.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this.
Well, from your point of view.
From my point of view,
Yeah.
it's a lot better than it was a few years ago when everything was just straight down the middle pop, and I think it was just kind of lyrically kind of void of any meaning or substance.
Yeah.
I think now there are some interesting things that are, you know, popping through on radio.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also such an amazing time right now because people are having amazing careers completely outside of radio or the traditional MTV world of that kind of thing. You know, there are people making great livings touring off stuff they put on the internet and doing huge shows. You know, people don't know this, but you know, when you have a big hit on Top 40, that doesn't necessarily really guarantee you a fan base and people who love your music.
You got to have a great live show these days.
You got to have a great live show, but it's a different audience too. You know, you're getting a different audience on Top 40 radio than you're getting necessarily with kids who are finding and discovering on the internet, which I think is so interesting now to see. I mean, I've seen instrumental bands, instrumental indie rock bands that are incredible that sell out, you know, 5,000 seats, whatever.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I think there's just more ways to sustain the good music coming out. And and it doesn't have to be in the radio, it doesn't have to be fully mainstream to be successful.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. You know, I was thinking to myself yesterday, I was saying, what does Kevin listen to in his free time? So what do you listen to when you're in the car, you're jamming out, or you're at home and you're just kind of kicking it at home, and what do you listen to?
Lately, I'm on a serious joint, which is the reggae station.
Okay. All right.
I love, for personal pleasure listening.
Yeah.
I love reggae. Excuse me.
Reggae.
I love reggae. I love Sade.
Oh yeah, you can't do Sade.
I tend to love music that is more soothing when I'm listening to it at home or driving.
We talked a little bit last night about how you're a big fan of Prince.
Huge Prince fan.
Can never listen to enough Prince.
Exactly, and the reason I think you can never listen to enough because it's so diverse. And
so diverse.
You don't get the sense that okay, we hear the 10 songs or the 12 songs, whatever at the time, you know, for the album, and here's the album, and here's the thing. It's you're getting a look inside his own artistry and his thinking, the
evolution.
You're listening to more mistakes. You're listening to diversions. You're listening to things he's tried, but that makes you feel close to an artist.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the biggest things that I've seen is someone who writes the bulk of his material by himself. And to me, that we were using the example last night of you know, your favorite author is Stephen King, and would you read a book written by Stephen King and 4 other authors combined, and it would sort of feel like you would not really get your full Stephen King in from that, and that's something that I've always really admired is people who go in and can write and produce a song by themselves, and so he's one of those, and you know, love him, and you know, I'm a big fan of all the classic. You know, I love the Beatles, I love the Stones, I love U2, I love the Clash. You know, all kinds of music.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, it sounds like me too. Yeah, I'm all across the board. You know.
Yeah, you're
just open. You know, I mean, if it's good, it's good.
If it's good, it's good. There's no like.
There's no.
I could never like understand an iTunes or Spotify like playlist thing where they're gearing it to you like this is what you like, you know, as in like you like Italian food and then like I'm gonna eat all Italian food, you know, like you like this, you'll like that, and I get that, and there's genius behind it, but I don't necessarily like anything else in a certain genre, even if I like one song a lot. Yeah.
I was gonna ask you what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given, up to date? Up to now.
Ever been given or could ever give?
Maybe both.
Both.
Yeah, maybe both. Yeah.
I don't know. You know,
maybe early on in the career.
Early on, it was actually my mother. She said something really smart to me when I started practicing guitar.
Yeah.
She said, "Whatever you put in is what you'll get out." I thought that's genius. So
that is, yeah.
If some other kid's practicing 6 hours a day and I practice 8 hours a day, then I'll be better. Yeah. Like that's something I can control. That's something I can get behind. That's a discipline. If I sit there and I just do it, and I think that stayed with me. You know, when you're focused and you put in the energy, there are results. You know, And I know a lot of people, there's a lot of stories of, well, I tried for 10 years and I didn't get anywhere. But if you're really working towards something, you will identify maybe some of your mistakes and things that aren't quite letting you head in the right direction.
But don't give up. Don't give up.
Don't give up, and just do what you love. And,
do what you love.
You know, do the music you love. You know, and maybe it's not the most popular kind of the time, but you don't know for sure if there isn't a place for it.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just a matter of finding a partner or someone else who says, wow, if I take what you're doing here and mix it with what I do. So, you know, the thing is when you're chasing success and you're chasing acceptance, you're always kind of missing it, you know, because
you're not staying true to yourself.
You're not staying true to yourself, and then the thing that you were doing naturally, like, you know, a year before is the new thing that's popular.
And some of the people that we love, they stayed true to themselves. They didn't follow the trends.
Yeah.
But the albums or the songs that they released were the trend. You know, that set the trend for all the new, you know.
It set the trend, and you don't know what's going to be the trend. I've worked on records where I thought, man, this is a hit. This is like everyone's.
But you don't know. No one knows.
But you don't know.
Yeah.
And then I, you know, the first hit I had out the gate, Let It Rock, was so many people, so many record companies said to me after, oh, if we had that song for so-and-so or so-and-so, that would have been amazing, or we would have taken that.
Yeah.
And I said, no, you wouldn't have.
Yeah, exactly.
You wouldn't have, because...
You say that now, but...
Well, I mean, listen, everyone wants a hit, and that's okay. You know, we all want to do well, but really, you know, that song was written with the biblical theme and about things that have no relation to anything in modern pop culture.
Yeah, yeah.
And yet people felt it because it was real.
Yeah. So,
Be true to yourself.
Be true to yourself, yeah. Don't give up. What, where can people follow you?
On Instagram, Kevin Rudolf Music. On Twitter, Kevin Rudolf. On Facebook, Kevin Rudolf.
Yeah.
That's it pretty much.
All right, very good. And for this show, you can check us out Twitter, Curtin Cole 87, Instagram, Curtin Cole 87. We're also on Facebook. You can like the page. We appreciate the support. Kev, I appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, man.
Thank you so much. And God bless you, and you know, future success, you know, all the best. And thank you very much. You're the man.
Thanks, man.
Yep, you got it.